Mobster and hitman Jimmy Conlon has one night to figure out where his loyalties lie. Welcome back to Movies Explained. Today's film is a crime action from 2015 titled Run All Night. The film begins in the woods where a man named Jimmy Conlon lies on the ground dying. He narrates how he regrets his life that's full of betrayal and letting down his loved ones. 16 hours earlier, Jimmy wakes up in his favorite bar and goes to the owner Danny Maguire's office. Danny is joking around with two cops before handing over some bribe money. Jimmy approaches Danny after the cops have left, saying that his father told him to borrow money from Danny. Danny snarkily agrees, but only if Jimmy becomes a Santa for their Christmas party, which Jimmy reluctantly agrees to. Later, Danny meets with his father and Jimmy's ex-boss, Irish mobster lord Shawn Maguire. Danny introduces him to some Albanian heroin traffickers who are looking for protection and safe passage for their products. Shawn refuses to work with them, claiming that his days as a mobster are over and that he now only runs legal businesses. This refusal causes the Albanians to demand that Danny return the money they gave him to arrange a deal with Shawn. They threaten to kill Danny if he doesn't return the money by tomorrow, but he says he will persuade his father to accept the offer. Later, during the Christmas party at the Maguires, Jimmy, who is an alcoholic, acts inappropriately in front of the families as he is drunk. Shawn checks in on his condition, as he is Jimmy's only friend and the last person in this world who still cares about the ex-hitman. Jimmy admits that he is losing sleep and drowns himself with alcohol to numb the regret of killing so many people while working for Shawn. In a boxing gym, Jimmy's son Michael Conlon is practicing in a boxing ring. Michael is a retired pro boxer and now helps out some younger kids practice boxing in his gym. He provides for his wife Gabby and their two daughters by being a limousine driver, but he has a very strained relationship with Jimmy and doesn't want to see his father. That night, his clients are the Albanian mobsters who are going to Danny's place for their money. Michael is told to stay in the car and wait for them, then comes across one of the kids he's been helping in the gym he nicknamed Legs. Legs asks to come in the car so he can take pictures in a limo, and Danny eventually agrees. Meanwhile, inside Danny's house, the Albanians confront Danny, who's high on drugs. He gives them their money inside of a duffel bag, but it turns out to be fake Monopoly money. The Albanian boss starts to get angry before Danny pulls a gun out and shoots him without hesitation. He shoots the other Albanians, but one of them manages to run out to the street. Danny follows him, which is seen by Legs, who is recording on his phone, and tells Michael to look. Immediately after Danny shoots the guy, Michael tells Legs to duck under the back seat while he turns on his car. Unfortunately, Danny sees him and smashes his window before he can get away. But he tries to reason with Danny, saying that he's Jimmy's son, and that they knew each other since they were kids. This doesn't stop Danny from dragging Michael away from his vehicle and dragging him towards the house. Inside, Michael puts up a fight and manages to escape through the back door. Danny pursues him but eventually loses his tracks on a busy street. Danny's friend approaches him and shows him Michael's wallet, which he had left in his jacket, so the two decide to head to his address, which is listed on his ID card. In his house, Jimmy receives a call from Shawn about Michael's involvement with Danny. He immediately takes a gun that he has hidden in the kitchen and heads to Michael's house. Michael arrives at his house and calls Gabby, telling her not to come back from her brother's house until he deems it safe. Minutes later, there's a knock on the door, but it turns out to be Jimmy, who Michael reluctantly lets inside. Jimmy tells his son that Shawn would appreciate it if Michael doesn't report the incident to the police for his and his family's safety. They discuss how Michael doesn't want to see Jimmy because he thinks his father is trash for being a hitman, and how Jimmy only comes to see him now because Shawn ordered it. Jimmy tells him that Shawn is willing to pay a handsome price for his cooperation, but Michael still seems to reject the idea. Shawn wants his son to not do anything rash before he hears back from Jimmy. He calls Danny, who agrees to his terms, but he has already arrived at Michael's house. He prepares to kill Michael despite his father's order. As Jimmy leaves, Danny sneaks into Michael's house through the back door. On his way out, he spots Danny's car parked outside and immediately turns around. Inside, Michael sees Danny, who's about to shoot him, but Jimmy manages to shoot him first while his friend escapes. Michael is shocked and wants to call the cops. Jimmy calls Shawn and tells him that he killed Danny for trying to shoot Michael. They come to an understanding that Shawn will seek revenge and that their friendship has just ended. After the call, Jimmy warns Michael against calling the police, so Michael kicks him out of the house before proceeding to call 911. He reports that his father had killed a man in self-defense. Shortly after, a couple of cops arrive at his house. The officers, who are the same ones on Shawn's payroll, start to arrest Michael. Outside the house, Jimmy waits in his car watching. He tails the officers' car, who are reporting that Michael had killed Danny and had escaped, assuming that they're planning to take him somewhere else while framing him for the murder. Eventually, one of Shawn's men pulls up beside the police car and urges the officers to follow him. When they're about to arrive at their destination, the cops are hit by Jimmy's car before they get into an intense car chase. They ram each other's cars and shoot at each other until the officers eventually lose control and crash into a store. Jimmy approaches the car and gets his son out of the back seat while Michael grabs one of the officers' guns on the ground. While the two are fleeing, one of the officers emerges and begins shooting at them. Michael wants to shoot him back, but he's prevented by Jimmy, who shoots the officer dead. As more cops and Shawn's men pursue them, the father and son flee through the busy traffic and enter a subway station. Jimmy gets caught by Shawn's men and they get into a fight while Michael walks away to the platform and steps on a train. Jimmy ends up fighting Frank, who he had seen earlier during the Christmas party, and strangles him to death. Michael's train is about to leave when he sees Jimmy and pulls him into the train. During the ride, Jimmy explains how Shawn would gather his men and make sure that they tear Michael's life apart. Shawn has ordered his men to put the Albanian mobsters' bodies in Michael's limo, making sure that the cops find them. Jimmy tells Michael how the good cops won't help Michael either, because they had killed a fellow cop, and also because Michael is Jimmy's son, a hitman they've been trying to prosecute for years. Jimmy asks Michael to let his father help him out just for one night, then promises that Michael won't ever have to see him again. Meanwhile, Shawn is interrogating Danny's best friend, who managed to run away from Jimmy. He hugs the grieving boy before stabbing him in the back until he dies. Jimmy and Michael get off of the train and walk into a parking lot where Jimmy breaks into a car using only a shoelace. He wants Michael to go to his brother-in-law's place and make sure that his family is safe. Jimmy will attempt to talk to Shawn and make a deal, so he tells Michael to sit tight until he contacts him again. In her brother's house, Gabby is asleep when her brother Ricky wakes her up to show her the news, reporting that Michael and Jimmy are fugitives. Not long after, Michael arrives at the house only to be confronted by Gabby and Ricky. He briefly explains the situation and asks his wife to trust him to fix this mess. Shortly after, they hear someone banging on the front door. Michael tells Ricky to pretend like he hasn't seen him or his family before he and Gabby run to their daughter's room. They tell their kids that they're going to play hide and seek as Shawn's men barge into Ricky's house looking for them. Ricky insists that he hasn't seen Michael or his family, despite not having the time to clean up traces of them being there earlier. One of them keeps interrogating Ricky, while the other goes through the rooms trying to find the family who is hiding in a bathtub. Fortunately, they receive a call to go somewhere else and leave the house. Back at the scene of the officer's death, Detective John Harding is leading the investigation when his partner, Detective Oscar Torres, informs him that Danny has been found dead in Michael's house, and that he reported that his father is the killer. John receives a call from Jimmy, who wants his help to clear Michael's name because he's the only cop Jimmy can trust. In exchange, Jimmy will prove his son didn't kill all these people and agrees to turn himself in for the murders of the two officers, and will give John the list of people he has killed throughout his hitman career. John agrees to give Michael a chance to explain himself, but Jimmy says he needs more time to clean up the mess before he turns himself in. Afterwards, Jimmy takes a cab to a restaurant in the city where he meets up with Shawn. He apologizes for killing Danny and begs that Shawn spare Michael's life because he's not the one who pulled the trigger. Jimmy threatens to tell the police about Shawn's crimes as a mob boss and the people he ordered Jimmy to kill, but Shawn is unfazed since he's got a lot of cops on his payroll. He tells Jimmy that he will do anything to kill Michael so that Jimmy can feel how empty his life would be without his son, just as Shawn and his wife are right now. Feeling that the talk is over, Jimmy waits until the hockey game is over before leaving the restaurant, using the crowd to disappear. He goes to Ricky's house and tells Michael to take his family to a secluded cabin in the woods where he used to go as a kid. Michael gives the directions to Ricky, who drives Gabby and the kids towards the cabin without Michael. Jimmy insists that Michael should have fled with them for his own safety, but Michael wants to stay and help. He wants to visit Legs, who can prove his innocence because Legs has seen everything. The two head towards Legs' neighborhood. On the drive, Jimmy explains how he had to leave Michael and his mother to protect them. Meanwhile, Shawn sees his son's body in the morgue and decides to hire a hitman named Andrew Price to kill Jimmy. He gives him 24 hours to do it and offers to pay double. Andrew sneaks into Jimmy's house and finds out about the cabin in an old picture. At Legs' apartment, Jimmy and Michael try to find his unit by asking the neighbors. One of them recognizes them and calls 911, prompting the cops to come and evacuate the building in an attempt to look for them. Michael informs Legs' brother that he needs Legs' help when they realize that the cops are coming. Andrew hears the report on his police scanner and immediately heads there as well, and shuts down the building's power. Michael and Jimmy use the outage to blend in with the evacuating crowd, but Andrew can still spot them using his night vision goggles. After escaping Andrew's shots, Jimmy instructs Michael to escape now while he deals with Andrew. He lures Andrew towards himself and the two begin fighting. Michael decides to go back and help his father. He aims a gun at Andrew, but Jimmy tells him not to pull the trigger, and they escape from the balcony without killing Andrew. Detective John spots the two and sees that someone is shooting at them. Michael and Jimmy manage to escape the cops and head to Jimmy's brother Eddie's house. Michael assists Jimmy in dressing his wound while Eddie inquires as to what is going on. He thinks that Jimmy is going to give Michael to Shawn since Jimmy killed his own cousin to stop him from talking to the cops in the past. Michael is furious to find out about it and decides to go to the cabin alone. Jimmy decides to go visit his mother in the hospital before dealing with Shawn. He calls Shawn to give him one last chance to stop hunting down Michael, but Shawn refuses. Jimmy lets him know that he's going to kill him as he enters Shawn's pub. He kills every single one of Shawn's men while Shawn runs away towards the train yard. The two fire on each other until Jimmy manages to shoot his former best friend, holding Shawn in his arms as he dies. In the morning, Detective John is visited by Legs, who gives him the video of Danny killing the Albanian. He also receives a call from Michael, who says he wants to turn himself in. Meanwhile, Jimmy is on his way to the cabin, holding a list of his past victims' names. When he arrives, Michael informs him that the cops are on their way and wants Jimmy to leave, but Jimmy's too old to run and wants to wait for the cops to arrive. He tells his son not to worry about Shawn anymore as Gabby comes out to finally introduce herself and her daughters to Jimmy. Understanding that his father intends to turn himself in, Michael goes to the lake with his family so the kids don't have to see him getting arrested. As he smiles while watching his family, he is shot by Andrew, who's apparently still looking for him. Michael instructs his family to run while he goes to help his father. Jimmy takes a shotgun from the house and gets into a shootout with Andrew in the woods, but ends up getting shot. Michael is also hunting down Andrew, who's coming for his daughters, getting into another shootout while Jimmy lies dying on the ground. Using his last strength, Jimmy manages to shoot Andrew dead just as he's about to shoot Michael. Michael rushes to his dying father before John arrives to find Jimmy dead with the list of names in his hand. After everything, Michael returns to his normal life, being a boxing coach and working hard for his family. Before leaving for work, Michael pauses to look at a picture of him and Jimmy in front of the cabin. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.